After my husband's funeral, I started volunteering to ease my loneliness. Each week, a homeless man thanked me. One night as I left, he grabbed my wrist and whispered, "Ma'am, do not go to your son's house for Christmas. Make an excuse. Meet me here on Friday. I must show you something. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from." The steam from the industrial soup pot had long since stopped fogging my glasses, but I still wiped them clean out of habit. 3 months of volunteering at St. Mary's Community Kitchen had turned me into someone I barely recognized. A woman with purpose instead of the hollow shell who'd stood at Richard's graveside in August, wondering what came next. "Thank you, ma'am." The voice was the same every Tuesday and Thursday evening. Soft, respectful, almost apologetic. I looked up at the man I'd come to think of as Thomas, though he'd never told me his name. Mid-50s, perhaps, with graying hair that he kept surprisingly neat and eyes that seemed too sharp for someone living on the streets. He always wore the same navy jacket, carefully mended at the elbows. "You're welcome," I said, ladling chicken noodle soup into his bowl. "There's fresh bread tonight, too." He nodded, took his tray, and moved along. The line stretched behind him, 40, maybe 50 people seeking warmth and a hot meal on this November evening. I'd learned not to ask questions, not to pry into the circumstances that brought each person through our doors. Sister Margaret, who ran the kitchen, had taught me that dignity came before curiosity. But Thomas was different. He never smelled of alcohol. His hands didn't shake. And twice I'd seen him reading. Actual books, not just discarded newspapers. Once it had been Dostoevsky. I'd been a high school English teacher for 37 years. I recognized the addition. The evening wore on. My feet ached in sensible shoes that had somehow become less sensible since I'd turned 66. My son Michael kept suggesting I slow down, as if grief could be outweighed in an armchair, as if the empty house on Maple Street would feel less empty if I simply sat in it long enough. Christmas was coming, 6 weeks away. Michael had invited me to spend it at his home in the suburbs. Him, his wife Mary, and my granddaughter Sophie. I'd accepted, grateful not to face the first Christmas alone, even as I dreaded Mary's barely concealed impatience with my presence. By 8:30, we'd served the last guest. I was helping Sister Margaret wipe down the tables when I felt a hand on my wrist. Thomas stood beside me, his grip urgent but not painful. His eyes darted toward the door, then back to my face. "Ma'am, I need to speak with you, privately." Sister Margaret had stepped into the kitchen. We were alone in the dining hall, fluorescent lights humming overhead. "Of course," I said, my heart rate picking up for reasons I couldn't name. "Is everything all right?" He released my wrist and stepped back, maintaining a respectful distance. "No, ma'am, it's not." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small piece of paper, folded multiple times. "Do not go to your son's house for Christmas as you planned. Make up an excuse. On Friday, meet me at this address. I will show you something." My breath caught. "How do you know about—" "Friday, 2 o'clock. He pressed the paper into my hand. "Please, Mrs. Woolsey, your life may depend on it." He knew my name. Before I could respond, he turned and walked out into the November night, leaving me standing there with a piece of paper burning in my palm like evidence of something I didn't yet understand. Sister Margaret emerged from the kitchen, her round face creased with concern. "Elaine, you look pale. Are you feeling well?" I closed my fist around the paper. "Just tired. I think I'll head home." "Of course, dear. You've been working so hard." She patted my shoulder. "Get some rest." I drove home through streets I'd known for 40 years, past the park where I used to take Michael for ice cream, past the library where Richard and I had met at a community lecture on local history. Everything looked the same. Everything felt different. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. I'd left the porch light on, a habit from the years when Richard worked late, and I wanted him to see a welcoming glow. Now I did it because coming home to complete darkness felt like an admission of defeat. Inside, I hung my coat and set my purse on the entry table before unfolding the paper Thomas had given me. An address in blue ink, 1847 Riverside Avenue, Unit 12, and below it, 3 words that made my hands tremble. They planned everything. I sat down hard on the stairs leading to the second floor, the paper crinkling in my grip. Who planned everything? Michael? Mary? Planned what? My phone buzzed in my purse. I pulled it out with shaking fingers. Michael. Hi, Mom. Just confirming you're still coming for Christmas. Mary wants to plan the menu. Let me know your flight details when you book. I stared at the message, my teacher's mind, trained to spot inconsistencies in student papers, catching on something. Michael never asked about flight details this early. I hadn't even mentioned flying. The drive was only 3 hours. Another text arrived. Also, have you thought about what we discussed? About the house. The house. Our family home. Richard and I had paid off the mortgage 15 years ago. After the funeral, Michael had suggested, gently, carefully, that I might want to consider downsizing. It's a lot of space for one person, Mom. A lot of maintenance. We could help you find a nice condo. I'd deflected, changed the subject, told him I needed time, but he kept bringing it up, and Mary had started sending me links to retirement communities. Just to look at, she'd say. Just to consider your options. I typed back, still planning to drive. Haven't booked anything yet. Need to check my schedule. A safe response, non-committal. I climbed the stairs to the bedroom I'd shared with Richard for 38 years. His reading glasses still sat on the nightstand. I hadn't been able to move them. Sleep didn't come easily. I lay in the dark, listening to the house settle, thinking about Thomas's warning. A homeless man who read Dostoevsky and knew my name, who knew my Christmas plans, who'd waited 3 months to approach me, building trust meal by meal, thank you by thank you. They planned everything. At 2 a.m, I got up and went to Richard's study. He'd been an accountant, meticulous and organized. His files were still exactly as he'd left them, color-coded and alphabetized. I pulled out the folder labeled Estate Planning and started reading. Our will was straightforward. Everything to me, then to Michael upon my death. The house, the savings, the life insurance Richard had been so proud of maintaining. We'd been comfortable, not wealthy, but secure. I was about to close the folder when a loose paper slipped out and fell to the floor. It was a photocopy of our deed, dated 6 months ago. Richard's handwriting in the margin. Michael asked about adding his name. Told him no. Need to discuss with Elaine first. But Richard had never discussed it with me. He'd died 2 weeks after making that note. Massive heart attack. Quick. The doctor said he hadn't suffered. I sat back in his leather chair, the deed photocopy in my lap, and felt the first cold thread of real fear work its way down my spine. The next morning, I called Michael. Mom, hi. Did you get my text? I did. I kept my voice steady. Actually, honey, I wanted to talk to you about something. Did you and Dad discuss the house before he died? About adding your name to the deed? Silence. Then, why do you ask? I found a note. In his files. Oh. A pause. Yeah. We talked about it. Just casual conversation. You know, planning ahead. Making things easier for you eventually. Easier how? Mom, you're 66. Eventually you'll need help managing everything. Dad understood that. He just wanted to make sure you'd be taken care of. Something in his tone, smooth, rehearsed, reminded me of the way students lied about plagiarism, not with obvious falsehoods, but with careful truths arranged to obscure the bigger picture. I see, I said. Well, nothing was decided, so there's nothing to worry about. Right, of course. Relief in his voice. So, Christmas. Mary's excited. Sophie's been asking about you. We talked for a few more minutes. Safe topics, grandmotherly concerns. And then I hung up. Friday was 3 days away. I spent those days in a fog of mounting dread and compulsive investigation. I went through every file in Richard's study. I checked our bank statements, our tax returns, our insurance policies. Everything appeared normal. Everything was exactly as it should be, except for that note. Michael asked about adding his name. Told him no. Why would Michael ask such a thing while his father was still alive, while I was healthy and independent? What would make things easier for me about giving up partial ownership of my own home? On Thursday evening, I returned to the soup kitchen. Thomas wasn't there. Sister Margaret noticed me scanning the crowd. Looking for someone? The man who usually wears the navy jacket, I said. I thought I might offer some extra help. She shook her head. Haven't seen him tonight. But they come and go, Elaine. Try not to get too attached. That night, I barely slept. At 1:30 in the afternoon on Friday, I drove to Riverside Avenue. The address led me to a storage facility on the industrial edge of town. Unit 12 was in the back row, a small orange door with a numerical padlock. I sat in my car for 10 minutes watching. No one came or went. The facility seemed deserted under the gray November sky. At exactly 2 o'clock, Thomas appeared from between the units, walking with purpose toward my car. He'd shaved. His hair was combed. He wore different clothes, khakis and a button-down shirt that fit well. He didn't look homeless. He looked like someone playing a part. I got out of the car. Mrs. Woolsey, thank you for coming. He gestured toward Unit 12. I need to show you something, but first, I need to explain who I am. That would be helpful, I said, trying to keep the tremor from my voice. My name is Thomas Garrett. I'm a private investigator. He pulled out a wallet and showed me a license. It looked legitimate. I was hired 6 months ago to conduct surveillance on someone. What I discovered involves you. It involves your son. And I believe it involves your late husband's death. The world tilted. I grabbed the car door to steady myself. His death? Richard had a heart attack. The doctors ruled it natural causes. And it probably was. Thomas's eyes were kind but serious. But the circumstances leading up to it weren't natural at all. Mrs. Woolsey, someone's been planning to take everything you have. And they've been planning it for a very long time. He opened the storage unit door. Inside were filing cabinets, a laptop, and walls covered with photographs. Photographs of my son, of Mary, of my house. And in the center of it all, a timeline written in black marker on white poster board. The last entry, dated 2 days ago, read, Christmas, final phase. I stepped into the storage unit on legs that felt disconnected from my body. The fluorescent light overhead flickered, casting shadows across the photographs that covered every available surface. My house from different angles. Michael's car parked in my driveway. Mary entering a building downtown that I recognized as a law office. You should sit, Thomas said, pulling out a folding chair. I sat because the alternative was falling. 6 months ago, he began. I was hired by a man named Douglas Hartley. He's an attorney who specializes in elder law. He came to me with concerns about a case he'd been asked to handle. Concerns about its legitimacy. What case? Thomas pulled a folder from the nearest filing cabinet. Your son and daughter-in-law approached Mr. Hartley in March. They wanted to explore legal options for what they called protecting family assets, in case you developed dementia or became incapacitated. The words hit me like a physical blow. I don't have dementia. I know, but they were building a case that you might. In the future. He opened the folder showing me printed emails. They asked about conservatorship, about power of attorney, about what it would take to be declared your legal guardians if you became unable to manage your own affairs. I stared at the emails, Michael's name in the sender field. The dates ranged from March through July. But Richard was still alive then. Why would they? Mr. Hartley asked the same question. He found it unusual that a son would be planning for his mother's incapacity while his father was still living and presumably capable of making such decisions. Thomas pulled out another document. Then your husband died. And 3 weeks later, Michael and Mary came back to Mr. Hartley with a new urgency. They wanted to move forward quickly. My hands were shaking. I folded them in my lap. What did this attorney do? He stalled, told them he needed more time, more documentation. Meanwhile, he hired me to investigate. Thomas gestured to the walls. What I found was a pattern. A very careful, very calculated pattern. He walked to the timeline and pointed to an entry from April. Your husband had a complete physical in April. Perfect health. His doctor told him he had the heart of a 50-year-old. Yes, I whispered. He was so pleased. 2 weeks later, Michael and Mary took out a second mortgage on their house. $400,000. Thomas showed me the bank records. They told the bank it was for renovations. But no work was ever done. The money went into an investment account. And then, over the next 3 months, It was slowly lost in what appears to be very bad stock decisions. I couldn't breathe properly. What does this have to do with Richard? I don't know if it has anything to do with his death. That's not what Mr. Hartley hired me to investigate. Thomas's voice softened. But the timing is remarkable. A healthy man dies suddenly. His son, who's in serious financial trouble, immediately accelerates plans to take control of his mother's assets. No. I stood up, the chair scraping against concrete. Michael wouldn't. He's my son. He loved his father. I'm sure he did. Thomas didn't move, didn't crowd me. But people in financial desperation do things they never imagined they would do. Mrs. Woolsey, your house alone is worth $600,000. You have life insurance, savings, retirement accounts. Combined, we're talking about well over $1 million. That's Michael's inheritance. Eventually. Why would he need to take control now? Because eventually might be 20 years away? And they need money now. He pulled out another file. 3 weeks ago, Mary quit her job. She told her employer it was to spend more time with family. But according to my sources, she was about to be fired for taking unauthorized advances from client accounts. She's an accountant, Mrs. Woolsey. She had access to other people's money, and she was borrowing from it. The room spun. I gripped the edge of the filing cabinet. You're saying my daughter-in-law is a thief? I'm saying she's desperate. They both are. Thomas paused. And desperate people are dangerous. A car door slammed outside. We both froze. Thomas moved to the small window at the back of the unit and peered through the blinds. It's just someone at another unit. But we should be quick. I don't know who else might be watching. Watching who? Me? I've seen a car parked near your house 3 times this week. Different times of day. A gray sedan. It's not there long. 20 minutes, maybe 30. But it's a pattern. He turned back to me. Mrs. Woolsey, I think they're monitoring you. Documenting your behavior. Building evidence. Evidence of what? I'm perfectly capable. Are you taking any medications? The question caught me off guard. Blood pressure medication. Something for cholesterol. Why? Who fills your prescriptions? There's a pharmacy near my house. I've used them for years. When's the last time you picked up your medications yourself? I thought back. Mary offered to pick them up last month. She said she was in the area. Thomas's expression darkened. And you've been taking them as prescribed? Of course. Any side effects? Memory problems? Confusion? Dizziness? My stomach dropped. I've been more forgetful lately. I thought it was grief and stress, and I'm 66. Some memory loss is normal. Or it's a side effect of medication you're not supposed to be taking. He pulled up a browser on his laptop and typed quickly. What are the names of your prescriptions? I told him. He researched for a moment, then turned the screen toward me. Your blood pressure medication. The standard dosage is 10 milligrams. Anything above 20 can cause confusion, dizziness, memory impairment. He pointed to an entry. What does your bottle say? I didn't have it with me. But I remembered Mary handing me the bag, remembered her saying the pharmacy had changed the pill size, that they looked different, but it was the same medication. I don't know, I said weakly. I'd have to check. Check tonight, and don't take anything else until you do. His tone was urgent now. Mrs. Woolsey, if they're altering your medication to create symptoms of cognitive decline, that's not just manipulation. That's a crime. That's poisoning. I thought I might be sick. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Why not go to the police? I did. I gave them everything I had. His jaw tightened. They said it was circumstantial. Family drama. Adult children arguing with their parents over money happens all the time. Without proof of an actual crime, something concrete, something undeniable, they won't act. So what do? You gather proof. You document everything. You protect yourself. He handed me a business card with just a phone number. This is a secure line. Call me anytime. And in the meantime, you need to be very, very careful. A phone rang. Mine, shrill in the confined space. Michael's name on the screen. I looked at Thomas. He nodded. I answered. Hello? Mom? Where are you? I've been trying to call the house. I'm out. Running errands. My voice sounded almost normal. Oh, good. You're getting out. That's healthy. A pause. Listen, Mary and I were thinking, why don't we come visit you this weekend? We could help you with some of that yard work you've been putting off. Maybe go through some of Dad's things. Start the sorting process. Start the sorting process. As if Richard's life could be reduced to trash bags and donation boxes. This weekend isn't good, I said. I have plans. Plans? Surprise in his voice. What kind of plans? Lunch with a friend. The lie came easily. Too easily. When had I learned to lie to my own son? Well, cancel it. This is important, Mom. The yard's a mess. Winter's coming. You can't manage all this alone. Can't manage, can't handle, can't cope. The words he'd been using for months, subtle and corrosive, building a narrative of incompetence. I'll manage, I said firmly. I have to go, Michael. I'll talk to you later. I hung up before he could respond. Thomas was watching me with something like approval. Good. Don't give them access to your house. Don't give them opportunities to plant evidence or remove documents. Evidence of what? Anything they could use to prove you're not capable. Legal papers you've supposedly forgotten about. Bills you've supposedly not paid. Medication you've supposedly misused. He pulled out a small device that looked like a USB drive. This is a voice recorder. Keep it with you. If they come to your house, if they pressure you about anything, record it. We need documentation of their manipulation. I took the recorder with numb fingers. This feels like a spy movie. This can't be real. It's real. And it's going to get worse before it gets better. He closed the laptop. The Christmas plan, I don't know exactly what they're planning, but my guess is they're going to create a situation where you appear confused, incompetent, or unable to care for yourself. Something public. Something witnessed by multiple people who could testify to your incapacity. And then? Emergency conservatorship. They petition the court, present evidence of your decline, and a judge grants temporary guardianship pending a full evaluation. Once they have that, they can access your accounts, make decisions about your property, control your life. I thought of Mary's emails about retirement homes, just to look at, just to consider your options. They're going to try to put me in a facility. Eventually, yes. Once they control your assets, they'll sell the house, liquidate your accounts, and warehouse you somewhere cheap while they spend your money. Thomas's expression was grim. I've seen it before, Mrs. Woolsey. Elder financial abuse is more common than you'd think. And when it's family doing it, it's almost impossible to stop. But you stopped it. This lawyer, Mr. Hartley, he saw through it. He saw through it because he was paying attention. Most people don't. Thomas handed me the folder of documents. Take these. Hide them somewhere safe. Not in your house. They might search it if they get the chance. A safe deposit box, maybe. Or with a trusted friend. I almost laughed. Trusted friend. I'd let my friendships lapse after Richard died. I'd been so consumed with grief, so isolated, that I'd pushed everyone away. Everyone except my son, who'd been there every week, calling, visiting, helping himself to my future. I need to go, I said. I need to think. Be careful. And Mrs. Woolsey? Thomas waited until I met his eyes. Don't confront them, not yet. They can't know you're investigating. If they realize you're aware of their plans, they might accelerate. Do something drastic. I nodded and walked out into the cold November afternoon, clutching a folder full of evidence that my own child was trying to destroy me. The drive home was a blur. I kept checking the rearview mirror, looking for the gray sedan Thomas had mentioned. I didn't see it, but I felt watched nonetheless. At home, I went straight to the bathroom and found my medication bottles. The blood pressure pills looked different than I remembered. Larger, a different shade of white. I turned the bottle to read the label. 25 milligrams, 2.5 times my prescribed dose. I dumped them down the toilet and watched them disappear in a swirl of water, thinking about all the times I'd felt dizzy lately. All the times I'd forgotten where I put my keys. All the times Michael had been there to witness it, to make gentle suggestions about my declining faculties. My phone buzzed. A text from Mary. Michael said you sounded upset on the phone. Everything okay? We're worried about you. They were worried. How touching. I texted back. Everything's fine. Just tired. Talk soon. I went to Richard's study and locked the door, then pulled out the folder Thomas had given me. I read every document, every email, every bank statement. By the time I finished, it was dark outside, and I understood the full scope of what they'd planned. Michael and Mary had been methodically dismantling their own financial life, gambling on the assumption that they could seize mine. They'd borrowed against everything they owned. They'd made risky investments that failed. They'd spent money they didn't have on a lifestyle they couldn't afford. And now, they were broke. Worse than broke, they were in debt. I was their solution, their retirement plan, their golden parachute. And if I had to be declared incompetent to make it work, well, that was just an unfortunate necessity. I sat in Richard's chair as the full weight of betrayal settled over me like a shroud. My son, my only child, the boy I'd raised, taught to read, sent to college, the man who'd given me my only grandchild. He was going to take everything and call it love. My phone rang again. Michael. I didn't answer. It rang 3 more times over the next hour. Then Mary called, then Michael again. Finally, a text. Mom, please answer. We're coming over. I looked at the clock. 8:30 at night. They were 30 minutes away, maybe less if they were already in the car. I grabbed the folder and ran. I drove to the only place I could think of, the public library on Madison Street. It stayed open until 9 on Fridays, and its parking lot had security cameras. Whatever was about to happen, I wanted witnesses. I wanted proof that I was lucid, coherent, capable. Inside, I found a study carrel in the back corner and spread Thomas's documents across the table. My hands were still shaking, but my mind was clearing with every minute that passed since I'd flushed those pills. How long had they been poisoning me? How many weeks of manufactured confusion? My phone buzzed continuously in my purse. I ignored it. I needed to think like the teacher I'd been for nearly 4 decades. Analyze, organize, find the patterns. I pulled out a notepad and began creating my own timeline, cross-referencing dates from the documents. March 15th. Michael and Mary first contact Attorney Hartley about conservatorship options. April 3rd. Richard has his physical. Perfect health. April 18th. Michael and Mary take out a $400,000 second mortgage. May through July. Money disappears into failed investments. August 12th. Richard dies. August 29th. I start volunteering at the soup kitchen, trying to cope with loneliness. September 3rd. Michael and Mary return to Hartley with new urgency. September 20th. First time I notice feeling forgetful. First time Mary helps by picking up my prescriptions. October 15th. Michael suggests I consider downsizing. November 1st. Mary sends me retirement community links. November 21st. Thomas warns me at the soup kitchen. The pattern was clear, methodical, devastating. But something nagged at me. I flipped through the documents again, looking for a bank statement from Michael and Mary's account, showing a large cash deposit in early August, $10,000, deposited 2 days before Richard died, with no listed source. Where had they gotten $10,000 in cash when they were supposedly broke? I took a photo of the statement with my phone and texted it to Thomas's secure number with a single question. Where did this come from? His response came within minutes. Don't know yet. Still investigating. Are you safe? Public library. They're looking for me. Good. Stay public. Stay visible. Don't go home tonight. I stared at his message. Don't go home tonight. To the house I'd lived in for 40 years. The house where I'd raised my son, where Richard had died in our bedroom, where every room held memories of the life I'd built. They'd already taken it from me, I realized. Even if I still had the deed, even if my name was still on the title, they'd poisoned it, made it unsafe. Excuse me, are you all right? I looked up. A young librarian stood beside my Carol, concern on her face. Yes, I said automatically. Then more honestly, no, but I will be. She hesitated. Is there someone I can call for you? No, thank you. I managed a smile. Just some family difficulties. I'm sorting them out. She nodded and moved away, but I saw her glance back twice. Good. Let her remember me. Let her remember a composed woman handling her business, not a confused elder who couldn't manage her own affairs. My phone rang. Not Michael this time. Mary, I answered. Elaine, thank God. Her voice was breathless, concerned. We've been so worried. Michael said you sounded strange on the phone, and when we drove to your house, you weren't there. You're at my house? We were worried. We thought something might have happened to you. I told Michael I was running errands. At 9 o'clock at night? A hint of something sharp beneath the concern. Elaine, that's exactly the kind of thing that worries us. You're not yourself lately. We've both noticed. There it was. The narrative. Not yourself. We've noticed. I'm at the library, I said calmly. Doing research. Is there something you needed? Silence. Then, research? What kind of research? Personal research. I am allowed to use the library, Mary. Of course you are. It's just unusual. For you. She paused. We'd like to talk to you. Can we meet you there? No, I'm leaving soon. Then we'll wait at your house. Please don't, it's late, I'm fine. I'll call Michael tomorrow. Elaine. I hung up. Immediately my phone rang again. I turned it off. The librarian was watching from the reference desk. I gathered the documents, tucked them carefully into my purse, and walked to the desk. I need to ask you something, I said. If I wanted to rent a safe deposit box, is the bank still open tomorrow? She checked her computer. First National is open until noon on Saturdays. Thank you. I paused. And if someone asked, would you remember that I was here tonight? That I seemed coherent and capable? Her eyes widened slightly. Is someone going to ask? They might. I'm involved in some family legal matters. It's important that I can prove I'm of sound mind. Understanding crossed her face. I saw her make the connection. Elderly woman, worried about being declared incompetent. It happened often enough that she didn't question it. I'll remember, she said. And I'll make a note in our system that you were here, if that helps. It helps tremendously. I left through the back exit and sat in my car for a long moment, trying to decide where to go. Not home. A hotel seemed paranoid, but maybe paranoid was appropriate. My phone was still off. I turned it on long enough to call Thomas. Mrs. Woolsey, status? They went to my house. They wanted to meet me at the library. I refused. I took a breath. Thomas, there's a cash deposit on their bank statement. $10,000, 2 days before Richard died. I need to know where it came from. I'm working on it. In the meantime, I need to know if they killed him. The words came out in a rush. I need to know if my son murdered his father. Silence on the line. Then quietly. I've been wondering the same thing. My vision blurred. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. The medical examiner ruled it a heart attack, Thomas continued. Natural causes. But if Richard was under stress, if something happened to trigger cardiac arrest, Mrs. Woolsey, I think you need to consider the possibility that they created the conditions for his death, even if they didn't directly cause it. How? I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. He paused. Where are you going to spend the night? A hotel, I suppose. Use cash. Don't use a credit card they could trace. And tomorrow, first thing, get that safe deposit box. Store everything. The documents, copies of your real prescriptions, anything they could use or alter. After we hung up, I drove to a chain hotel near the highway and paid cash for a room. The clerk barely looked at me. I was just another traveler, anonymous and unmemorable. In the room, I sat on the generic bedspread and finally allowed myself to feel the full weight of what was happening. My son was trying to steal my life. My daughter-in-law had poisoned me. And my husband, my Richard, who'd been healthy and strong and planning our retirement, was dead under circumstances that were looking less natural by the hour. I thought about the $10,000. Where had they gotten it? What had they done for it? My phone buzzed. I'd forgotten to turn it off again. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Woolsey, this is Douglas Hartley, the attorney who hired Mr. Garrett. I need to meet with you urgently. Your son and daughter-in-law came to my office this evening with a disturbing request. Please call me. I called immediately. Mrs. Woolsey, thank you. Hartley's voice was clipped, professional. I'll be direct. Your son and daughter-in-law came to me 3 hours ago. They want to file an emergency petition for conservatorship. They claim you've become a danger to yourself. My blood ran cold. Based on what? They say you've been acting erratically, disappearing without explanation, making paranoid accusations. They're particularly concerned that you've stopped taking your medications. Because the medications were making me sick. They increased the dosage without my doctor's knowledge. I believe you. But Mrs. Woolsey, they have documentation. Emails you allegedly sent that make no sense. Voice messages where you sound confused. They've been building a case. Emails I never sent. Confusion caused by drugs they gave me. Can you prove that? I thought of the pill bottle I'd flushed down the toilet. Not anymore. Then we have a problem. Papers rustled on his end. They're filing the petition Monday morning. They'll request an emergency hearing, claiming immediate danger. If the judge grants it, you could have a court-appointed guardian by the end of the week. What can I do? Be visible. Be coherent. Document everything. And most importantly, don't give them any ammunition. No erratic behavior, no emotional outbursts, nothing they can use to prove their case. Mr. Hartley, I think they might have killed my husband. Silence. Then, that's a very serious accusation. I know, but there's a cash deposit in their account right before he died. $10,000 from nowhere. And he was perfectly healthy. And then suddenly, Mrs. Woolsey, stop. His voice was urgent. Don't say this to anyone else. Not yet. If you accuse them of murder without proof, they'll use it to prove you're delusional. We need evidence, not theories. Thomas is investigating. I know. Let him do his job. In the meantime, you need to appear completely normal. Can you do that? I thought about 40 years of teaching teenagers, of maintaining composure through parent conferences and administrator evaluations and budget cuts, of smiling through grief at Richard's funeral, of keeping my voice steady when every part of me wanted to scream. I can do that, I said. Good. I'm going to fight this petition with everything I have, but I need you to help me. No more late-night library visits. No more ignored phone calls. Give them nothing to use against you. After we hung up, I lay in the dark hotel room and stared at the ceiling. They were going to court. They were going to try to take everything, legally and officially, with a judge's blessing. I turned on the television to drown out my thoughts. A news program flickered to life. Local news, talking about community events and weather. Then a segment about financial crimes. Elder financial abuse is on the rise, the reporter said. Experts say family members are the most common perpetrators, taking advantage of aging parents' trust and diminished capacity. The average victim loses over $120,000, and many cases go unreported due to shame or fear. I turned it off. My phone buzzed again. Another text from the unknown number, but this time the message made my heart stop. This is Sophie. Grandma, please come home. Mom and Dad are really upset. They say you're sick. Are you sick? I'm scared. Sophie, my granddaughter, 12 years old and bright as summer. They were using her now. I stared at the message, rage and grief warring inside me. How dare they drag Sophie into this? How dare they frighten her, use her love for me as a weapon? I typed carefully, Sophie, I'm fine. I'm not sick. Sometimes grown-ups have disagreements, but that doesn't mean anyone is sick or in danger. I love you very much. Tell your mom and dad I'll call them in the morning. The response came quickly. Okay, I love you too, Grandma. Please be careful. Be careful. As if I were the dangerous one. I looked at the documents spread across the hotel bed. Bank statements, emails, medical records, evidence of a conspiracy that spanned months, maybe years, if I counted all the subtle suggestions, all the gentle erosions of my autonomy that had started long before Richard died. My phone rang. Michael again. This time I answered. Mom, finally. We've been losing our minds. I'm fine, Michael. I'm safe. I'm at a hotel. A hotel? Why? Because I needed space to think. Mom, this isn't normal behavior. You're worrying us. You're worrying Sophie. His voice cracked with what sounded like genuine emotion. Please come home. Let us help you. Help me with what exactly? with whatever you're going through. This grief, this confusion. I'm not confused, Michael. Mom, when I checked on you tonight, I saw you'd flushed your medications down the toilet. That's not rational. How did he know that? Had they gone into my house? Searched my bathroom? How do you know what I did with my medications? I kept my voice level. I went to check on you. The door was unlocked. I always lock my door. Well, tonight you didn't. See? That's exactly what we're talking about. You're forgetting things, important things. I closed my eyes. They'd entered my house without permission, searched my bathroom, documented my actions. All of it would go into their petition, proof of my declining faculties. I'm hanging up now, Michael. I'll speak to you tomorrow. Mom, wait. I ended the call and turned off my phone. Then I pulled out Thomas's voice recorder and began documenting everything. Every conversation, every discovery, every piece of evidence. If they wanted to go to court, if they wanted a legal battle, I would give them one. But first, I needed to know the truth about Richard. And I needed to know it before Monday morning, when they filed their petition and tried to take away my freedom. I had 48 hours to save my life. I woke at 6 on Saturday morning, the hotel room unfamiliar and cold. For a moment, I forgot where I was and why. Then it all came crashing back. The documents, the poisoned pills, the conservatorship petition. 47 hours left. I showered and dressed in the same clothes from yesterday, wishing I'd thought to pack a bag. But then, running from your own son isn't something you plan for. It's not something you ever imagine having to do. At 7, I called Thomas. I need to know about that $10,000, I said without preamble. Today. I've been working on it all night. He sounded exhausted. It wasn't a bank transfer. It was a cash deposit, which means there's no electronic trail, but I have a lead. Tell me. Your husband had a life insurance policy through his former employer. $500,000, with you as the beneficiary. I know. I received it after he died. Right. But what you might not know is that he also had a smaller policy, a private one he took out 30 years ago when Michael was born. $50,000. My stomach tightened. I never knew about that. Most people forget about old policies. They pay the premiums automatically, barely notice the deductions. Papers rustled on his end. The beneficiary on that policy was Michael. Was? Your husband changed it 6 months ago. Changed the beneficiary from Michael to you. And according to the insurance company's records, Michael called them in July, asking about the policy. They told him about the beneficiary change. I sat down hard on the hotel bed. He found out his father had cut him out. Not just cut him out while he was drowning in debt, while he desperately needed money. Thomas paused. Mrs. Woolsey, I think that's when things escalated. That's when they moved from planning for your eventual incapacity to actively creating it. And the $10,000? I'm still working on that. But I have another question for you. Did your husband keep a safe at home? Somewhere he might have stored cash or important documents? In his study. A small fireproof safe. The combination was our wedding anniversary. Have you opened it since he died? I hadn't. I'd avoided Richard's study for weeks after the funeral. Couldn't bear to see his reading glasses on the desk, his coffee mug still sitting on the coaster. When I'd finally forced myself to go through his files, I'd focused on the filing cabinets, the paperwork. I'd never thought about the safe. No, I whispered. You need to check it, today. But not alone. I'll meet you there. They might be watching the house. I'm counting on it. I want them to see you acting normally. Going home, checking on things, nothing erratic or confused. His tone sharpened. But, Mrs. Woolsey, if we find what I think we might find in that safe, we need to secure it immediately, before they can get to it. We arranged to meet at my house at 9. I had 2 hours. I used them to get a safe deposit box at First National Bank. The manager who helped me was a woman in her 50s who'd known Richard. I was so sorry to hear about your husband, Mrs. Woolsey, she said as she processed the paperwork. Such a shock. Yes, I said. It was very sudden. How are you managing? Is your son helping you with everything? I looked at her carefully. He's been very involved, very concerned about making sure everything is handled properly. Something flickered in her expression. That's good. It's important to have family support during difficult times. But her tone suggested she'd seen situations where family support wasn't quite so supportive. I secured the documents Thomas had given me in the box, along with the bottle labels from my medications. I'd kept them before flushing the pills, some instinct telling me I might need proof. Then I added a handwritten account of everything that had happened, dated and signed. Is there anything else you need? The manager asked. Yes, if anyone asks. My son, my daughter-in-law, anyone. I was never here. Can you do that? She held my gaze for a long moment. Bank records are confidential, Mrs. Woolsey. We don't discuss our client's business with anyone who isn't authorized on the account. Thank you. I arrived at my house at 8:45. Thomas's car was already parked down the street, far enough away to be inconspicuous. No sign of the gray sedan he'd mentioned, but I felt watched nonetheless. Inside, everything looked normal. Almost normal. Someone had been here. I could tell by small things. A book moved slightly on the coffee table. The kitchen blinds raised higher than I usually kept them. The bathroom door left ajar when I always closed it. They'd searched the house, documented my forgotten medications. Looked for what else, I wondered? Evidence? Weapons? Proof of incompetence? Thomas arrived exactly at 9, knocking softly on the back door. Anyone watching? I asked as I let him in. Not that I can see, but that doesn't mean much. He looked around the kitchen. They were definitely here. Can you tell if anything's missing? I don't know yet. Everything looks almost right. We went to Richard's study. The safe was built into the wall behind a painting of the Oregon coast, a place we'd visited on our 20th anniversary. I took the painting down with trembling hands and spun the dial. The safe opened. Inside were documents I expected. Birth certificates, our marriage license, the deed to the house, and things I didn't expect. Bundles of cash, neatly stacked and bound with rubber bands, and a sealed envelope with my name written in Richard's handwriting. Thomas pulled on latex gloves before touching anything. How much cash would you say is here? I counted quickly. $40,000. Your husband kept $40,000 in cash in his safe? I had no idea. I stared at the money, trying to reconcile this with the man I'd known. Richard had been cautious, practical. Why would he have so much cash hidden away? Thomas picked up the envelope addressed to me. You should read this. I broke the seal with shaking hands and pulled out several pages covered in Richard's precise handwriting. The date at the top was August 10th, 2 days before he died. My dearest Elaine, if you're reading this, something has happened to me. I hope I'm being paranoid. I hope we're growing old together and you're finding this while cleaning out the safe and laughing at my melodrama. But if not, if something has gone wrong, you need to know what I've discovered. Michael is in serious trouble, financial trouble that goes deeper than just bad investments. 3 weeks ago, he came to me and asked for money. Not a small amount. He needed $400,000 to cover debts. He was desperate, Elaine, sweating and shaking. He said if he didn't get the money, there would be consequences, legal consequences. I told him no, not because I don't love him, but because giving him that money would have meant taking out a reverse mortgage on our house. Your house. Your security. I couldn't do that to you. He left angry. And then strange things started happening. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely read the next paragraph. Someone broke into my office and accessed my files. My computer password was changed, then changed back. I started getting calls from the insurance company about policy inquiries I never made. And Michael kept calling, asking about the house, about our assets, about whether we'd considered planning ahead in case something happened to us. I changed my life insurance beneficiaries. I made a note to talk to you about it, but I wanted to be sure first. I needed to understand what was happening. Then yesterday, Michael and Mary came to dinner. Mary brought wine. A special bottle, she said, to celebrate nothing in particular. We drank it, and within an hour, I felt strange. My heart was racing. I was dizzy, disoriented. Mary suggested I lie down. She was very helpful, very concerned. She even offered to give me one of her relaxation pills to help me calm down. I took it. But after they left, I looked up the wine they'd brought. It's a brand that contains high levels of tyramine, dangerous for anyone taking certain medications. Medications like the blood pressure pills I take daily. Elaine, I think they were trying to trigger a cardiac event. I think they were trying to make it look natural. I confronted Michael this morning. He denied everything, said I was being paranoid, that the stress of retirement was affecting me. He was calm, reassuring, almost convincing. But then he said something that chilled me. Dad, you need to think about Mom's future. What happens to her if something happens to you and all your assets are tied up? He's planning something. Maybe not for me. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But he's planning something for you. And I think it involves getting control of everything we've built. The cash in this safe is my insurance policy for you. It's money I've been setting aside for years, just in case. It's not much, but it's yours. Hidden. Safe. If you need to run, if you need to fight, this gives you options. I'm going to see our lawyer on Monday. I'm going to change our will, create safeguards. I'm going to protect you, my love, the way I haven't protected you from the truth about our son. I love you. I have always loved you. And if I'm wrong about all of this, I'll hide this letter somewhere you'll never find it, and we'll laugh about my paranoia when we're 90. But if I'm right, if you're reading this because I'm gone, fight, Elaine. Fight for yourself. Our son is not the man we raised him to be. Don't let him take what you deserve. Forever yours, Richard. I couldn't breathe. The letter fell from my hands. Thomas picked it up, read it quickly. Mrs. Woolsey, Elaine, I'm so sorry. He knew. My voice came out broken. He knew, and he tried to warn me, and then he died. The wine, the medication interaction. Thomas was already on his phone typing. If they deliberately gave him something knowing it would react with his blood pressure medication, that's murder. It's extremely hard to prove, especially if the medical examiner already ruled it natural causes. He looked at me. But it's evidence. Combined with everything else, it's a pattern of intent. I thought about that dinner. I'd been there. I'd watched Mary open the wine, watched her pour it, watched her smile and make toasts. I'd seen nothing suspicious because I'd trusted her, trusted them both. What do we do? I asked. We document this. We photograph everything in this safe. We take the letter to Hartley. He paused. And we get you somewhere safe until Monday. Because if they know you have this letter... The front door opened. We both froze. Mom? Michael's voice echoed through the house. Your car's here. I know you're home. Thomas grabbed the letter and the cash, shoving them into his jacket. I quickly closed the safe and rehung the painting, my heart hammering. In here, I called out, forcing steadiness into my voice. In the study. Michael appeared in the doorway, Mary right behind him. They both looked exhausted, stressed. When they saw Thomas, their expressions hardened. Who's this? Michael asked. A friend, I said. Thomas, this is my son Michael and his wife Mary. Thomas extended his hand. Michael didn't take it. What are you doing here? Mary's tone was sharp. Helping Elaine with some paperwork, Thomas said easily. Estate matters. We can help with that, Michael said. Mom doesn't need strangers going through Dad's things. Thomas isn't a stranger. And I'm perfectly capable of deciding who helps me with my own affairs. The room went silent. This was the moment I realized. The moment where I either backed down or stood my ground. Mom, can we talk? Michael's voice softened. Alone? Anything you need to say you can say in front of Thomas. Fine. Michael took a breath. We're worried about you. This whole week, the late nights, the paranoia, refusing to talk to us. And now bringing strangers into the house to go through Dad's private things. Private things that belong to me now. It's exactly the kind of erratic behavior we've been seeing. The kind that makes us think you need help. What kind of help, Michael? Professional help. Medical help. Mary stepped forward. Elaine, we've consulted with doctors. What you're experiencing, the memory problems, the confusion, the paranoid thoughts, they're all symptoms of early cognitive decline. If we catch it now, there are treatments. I don't have cognitive decline. I have a son who increased my medication dosage to create symptoms. The words hung in the air like a grenade. Mary's face went pale. That's insane. That's exactly the kind of delusional... I have the bottle. The prescription says 10 milligrams. The pills you gave me were 25 milligrams. That's not a pharmacy error. That's deliberate. Michael's expression shifted. I watched him recalculate, adjust his strategy. Mom, if there was an error with your prescription, that's serious. We should report it. But accusing Mary of deliberately? I'm not just accusing her. I'm accusing both of you. I stood up, facing them. I know about the conservatorship petition. I know about your debts. I know about the insurance policy Dad changed. I know everything. Silence. Then Michael laughed. A harsh, bitter sound. You know everything? You don't know anything. He looked at Thomas. Who are you really? Some con artist she met at the soup kitchen? Some predator looking for lonely old women to manipulate? I'm a private investigator hired to look into your activities, Thomas said calmly. And I have documentation of everything. The financial fraud, the medication tampering, the pattern of elder abuse. Mary grabbed Michael's arm. We should go. No. Michael shook her off. This is my mother. My house. Eventually. My inheritance. He turned to me and I saw something cold in his eyes. Something I'd never seen before. You can't fight this, Mom. We have doctors who will testify to your incompetence. We have witnesses who've seen you acting confused. We have records of erratic behavior. By Monday, a judge will grant us conservatorship, and there's nothing you or your investigator can do about it. I have your father's letter, I said quietly. The color drained from Michael's face. What letter? The one where he explains how you tried to kill him, how you gave him wine that would interact with his medication, how you've been planning this for months. That's a lie. But his voice shook. Is it? Then why are you so afraid? Mary pulled harder on Michael's arm. Michael, we need to leave. Now. You can't prove anything, Michael said to me. Even if Dad wrote some paranoid letter, which I doubt, you can't prove we did anything. He had a heart attack. Natural causes. The medical examiner said so. But combined with everything else, the financial fraud, the medication tampering, the systematic manipulation, it creates a pattern. And patterns convince juries. Thomas stepped forward. You should listen to your wife, Michael. You should leave. For a moment, I thought Michael might lunge at him. His hands clenched into fists, his face red with rage. But Mary pulled him back, whispering urgently. This isn't over, Michael said to me. Monday morning, we're filing that petition, and you will lose. They left, the front door slamming behind them. I collapsed into Richard's chair, shaking. That was dangerous, Thomas said. Showing our hand like that. I know, but I had to see his face. I had to know for sure. I looked up at him. Did you see it? When I mentioned the letter? He's guilty, Thomas. Of all of it. Seeing it and proving it are two different things. He pulled out his phone. I'm calling Hartley. We need to accelerate our timeline. They're going to do something desperate now. They have no choice. What can they do? The petition isn't filed until Monday. Thomas looked at me grimly. Emergency petitions can be filed on weekends if there's immediate danger, and desperate people create immediate danger. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You should have stayed confused, Elaine. Would have been easier for everyone. Now we have to do this the hard way. I showed Thomas the message. He was already dialing. We're going to the police, right now. This is a direct threat. But even as we prepared to leave, I knew the truth. We had evidence of manipulation, of financial fraud, of potential murder. But we didn't have proof. Not the kind that would stand up in court. Not the kind that would stop a judge from granting conservatorship to a concerned son and his wife. I had 42 hours to find that proof. And my son had 42 hours to destroy me. The police station was exactly as I remembered from the one time I'd been there before. Years ago, when someone had broken into the school where I taught. Fluorescent lights, plastic chairs, the smell of burnt coffee and institutional cleaning products. The detective who met with us was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with kind eyes and a skeptical expression. Detective Jody Albright. She listened to our story, examined the documents Thomas had brought, read Richard's letter twice. Mrs. Woolsey, she said finally, I understand your concerns, but what you're describing, most of it falls into civil territory. Family disputes over conservatorship, financial disagreements. That's not criminal. What about the medication tampering? Thomas asked. Do you have the pills? The original prescription to compare them to? I shook my head. I flushed them. But I kept the bottle labels, which show what was dispensed, not what you actually received. A pharmacy error is possible. Proving intentional tampering without the physical pills is nearly impossible. And Richard's letter? I asked. He describes them trying to trigger a heart attack. Detective Albright sighed. It's concerning, but it's speculation. Your husband suspected something, but he didn't have proof either. And the medical examiner already ruled his death natural causes. Without new evidence, toxicology showing unusual substances, witnesses to suspicious behavior, I can't reopen a closed case. So they can just get away with it? My voice rose. They can poison me, kill my husband, steal everything, and there's nothing you can do? I didn't say that. She leaned forward. The threatening text message is actionable. That's harassment, possibly criminal intimidation. And if you believe you're in immediate danger, we can help you get a restraining order. A restraining order won't stop a conservatorship petition, Thomas said. No, but it might make a judge think twice about granting guardianship to someone who's been harassing the proposed conservatee. Detective Albright pulled out a form. Mrs. Woolsey, I believe you. But belief isn't enough in court. You need irrefutable proof, and you need it fast. We left the station with a case number and very little hope. She's right, Thomas said as we sat in his car. We need something concrete. Something undeniable. Like what? A confession? That would work. He looked at me thoughtfully. Elaine, what if we could get them to admit what they've done? On record? They're not going to confess to murder. Not murder, but maybe the other things. The medication, the financial manipulation, the conservatorship plan. He pulled out a small device, more sophisticated than the voice recorder he'd given me earlier. This is a professional recording system. It's legal in this state to record conversations you're a party to. If you could get them talking, they just threatened me. They're not going to sit down for a friendly chat. Not friendly, but they want something from you. They want you to sign something, agree to something, make their legal case easier. Thomas's eyes narrowed. What if you offered to cooperate? What if you called Michael and said you've thought it over, you understand their concerns, you're willing to discuss options? He won't believe me. Not after what just happened. He might if you sound defeated enough, confused enough, if you play into the narrative they've been building. I stared at him. You want me to pretend to be exactly what they've been saying I am. Just long enough to get them talking. To get them to explain their plans, their reasoning. People who think they've won get careless. They brag. They explain. They justify. It was a terrible idea. It was also the only idea we had. I called Michael from Thomas's car, putting it on speaker. He answered immediately. Mom. Michael, I let my voice shake. Let it sound uncertain. I think we need to talk. About what happened today. About everything. Silence. Then, cautiously. I'd like that. Can you come to the house? Tonight? Just you and Mary. No lawyers, no investigators. Just family. Of course. What time? 7 o'clock. I'll make dinner. The words tasted like ash. Like we used to. Before everything got so complicated. That sounds good, Mom. Really good. Relief in his voice. We just want what's best for you. You know that, right? I know. The lie came easier than it should have. I've been thinking about what you said. About needing help. About planning ahead. Maybe you're right. We are right. You'll see. We'll work it all out tonight. After we hung up, Thomas looked at me with something like admiration. That was convincing. 40 years of dealing with manipulative teenagers taught me a few things. I took a shaky breath. Now what? Now we wire your house. Multiple recording devices, placed strategically. We make sure we capture everything they say. He checked his watch. We have 5 hours to prepare. Let's use them. We spent the afternoon turning my home into a surveillance operation. Thomas planted tiny recording devices in the living room, the dining room, the kitchen. He showed me how to activate them remotely using my phone. The key is to keep them talking, he said. ask questions. Act confused when they explain things. It'll make them explain more, give more details. And don't accuse. Let them think they're convincing you, winning you over. What if they get suspicious? Then you end the conversation. But Elaine, you need to understand. If this goes wrong, if they realize what you're doing, they could accelerate their plans. File an emergency petition tonight. Have you declared incompetent before you can use any of this evidence? I understand. He gripped my shoulder. I'll be parked down the street, listening to everything. If anything goes wrong, if you feel threatened, you say the word garden and I'll be inside in 30 seconds. At 6:30, I started preparing dinner. Roast chicken, Richard's favorite. Vegetables from the farmer's market, an apple pie cooling on the counter. The smell filled the house with memories of better times, when Michael was young and innocent, and I didn't know what he was capable of becoming. My phone buzzed. A text from Sophie. Mom says we're having dinner at Grandma's tonight. I'm so happy you're feeling better. They'd told her I was sick. Of course they had. I texted back, looking forward to seeing you, sweetheart. It's just going to be Mom and Dad. They said I should stay home for grown-up talk. But I love you. They weren't bringing Sophie. Good. I didn't want her to witness what was about to happen. The doorbell rang at exactly 7. I checked my phone, all recording devices active and transmitting to Thomas's car. I smoothed my skirt, put on the smile I'd perfected over decades of parent-teacher conferences, and opened the door. Michael and Mary stood on the porch, both dressed nicely. Michael held a bottle of wine. I looked at it and felt my stomach turn. Wine. Like the wine they'd brought to kill Richard. Come in, I said warmly. Dinner's almost ready. They followed me to the dining room, where I'd set the table with our good china. The table where we'd celebrated birthdays and holidays, where Michael had done his homework while I graded papers, where Richard and I had shared thousands of quiet dinners. This looks wonderful, Mom, Michael said. Just like old times. I thought we could use some normalcy. I served the chicken, passed the vegetables, played the role of gracious hostess. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about needing help. Mary and Michael exchanged glances. We're glad to hear that, Mary said carefully. It shows real insight. I know I've been resistant, defensive even. I cut my chicken into small pieces, my hands steady despite the racing of my heart. But losing Richard was so hard. I think I've been in denial about how much it's affected me. That's completely understandable, Michael said. Grief can be overwhelming. And I have been forgetting things, getting confused. I looked at Mary. You were right about the medications. I must have made a mistake with the dosage. These things happen, Mary said smoothly, especially when you're managing multiple prescriptions alone. That's why having help is so important. What kind of help were you thinking? I asked. Specifically? Michael leaned forward. Well, first we'd want to make sure you're seeing the right doctors. Getting a full evaluation, cognitive function, memory, overall health, just to establish a baseline. A baseline for what? For treatment. For planning. He reached across the table and took my hand. Mom, the truth is, we're worried about your ability to manage everything alone. The house, the finances, the daily decisions. It's a lot for anyone, especially after a loss like Dad. So you think I should sell the house? Eventually, yes. Downsize to something more manageable. A nice apartment. Maybe a community with support services available. A retirement home. An independent living facility, Mary corrected. You'd have your own space, but help would be available when you need it. And what happens to the money from selling the house? Another glance between them. It would be managed carefully, Michael said. Invested wisely to ensure your long-term care. Managed by who? By us. With your permission, of course. We'd set up a trust, make sure everything is handled properly. I set down my fork. A trust you would control. For your benefit, Mom. For your protection. Protection from what? From making poor decisions. From being taken advantage of. Michael's voice took on an edge. From people like that investigator who's been filling your head with paranoid ideas. Thomas hasn't filled my head with anything. He's shown me evidence. Evidence of what? That we're concerned about our mother? That we want to help you? Michael stood up. his chair scraping against the floor. We've been patient, Mom. We've tried to do this gently. But you're not making it easy. How should I make it easy, Michael? Should I just sign over everything? Give you power of attorney? Let you move me into a home and sell my house and spend my money? It's not like that. Then what is it like? Explain it to me. Explain why you asked Dad to add your name to the house deed. Explain why you took out a $400,000 mortgage and lost it all. Explain why my medication dosage was mysteriously increased. Mary stood now too. Elaine, you're getting agitated. This is exactly the kind of paranoid thinking we've been talking about. I'm not paranoid. I'm informed. I know about the conservatorship petition you're filing Monday. I know about your debts. I know everything. You don't know anything. Michael's voice rose, his carefully maintained composure cracking. You think you're so smart, but you're just a confused old woman who can't accept that she needs help. Michael! Mary grabbed his arm, but he shook her off. No, I'm tired of playing nice. Tired of pretending. He turned to me, his face flushed with anger. You want to know why we need the house? Because we're broke, Mom. Completely broke. We made bad investments, yes. We made mistakes. And Dad could have helped us, should have helped us, but he refused. His own son drowning in debt, and he said no. So you decided to take it anyway. We decided to plan ahead, to make sure that when the time came, we'd be taken care of. That Sophie would be taken care of. By stealing my inheritance? By poisoning me to make me seem incompetent? We didn't poison you. You increased my medication, deliberately, to create symptoms. Mary stepped forward. We adjusted your dosage because you clearly needed it. Your blood pressure was high, your stress levels were through the roof. We were helping you. Without my doctor's knowledge. Without my consent. Because you weren't making good decisions. Mary's professional mask slipped. You were irrational, emotional, refusing to face reality. Someone had to take control. So you decided it should be you. Who else? You have no one else. No other children, no close friends, just us. Michael's voice dropped. And yes, we'll benefit from managing your assets. But you'll benefit too. You'll be taken care of, safe, supervised. Supervised, I repeated. Like a child. Like someone who can't be trusted. You can't be trusted, Mom. These past few months have proved that. I stood up slowly, my hands flat on the table. Michael, do you know what I did for 40 years? I taught English literature to teenagers, hundreds of them, thousands over the course of my career. What does that have to do with? I learned to recognize manipulation. I learned to spot plagiarism, when students would take someone else's words and try to pass them off as their own. When they'd construct elaborate lies to explain missing assignments or failing grades. I met his eyes. I learned to see through deception, and I see through yours. This isn't deception. You tried to kill your father. The room went silent. That's insane, Mary whispered. Is it? The wine you brought that night, the wine that interacts with blood pressure medication, the relaxation pill you offered him. You created the conditions for cardiac arrest and called it natural causes. Michael's face went white. You can't prove that. I have his letter, the one he wrote 2 days before he died, explaining what you'd done, what he suspected you were planning. A letter proves nothing. A paranoid man's speculation, combined with everything else, the financial fraud, the medication tampering, the systematic manipulation, it proves intent, Michael. It proves pattern, and pattern convinces juries. He stared at me, and I saw the moment he realized he'd lost, that his carefully constructed plan had fallen apart, that his mother, the confused old woman he'd been so certain he could control, had outmaneuvered him. You're recording this, he said flatly. That investigator, he's listening. Yes. Mary grabbed her purse. We're leaving, and on Monday we're filing that petition. We'll tell the judge you lured us here under false pretenses, that you've been acting erratically, that you need immediate intervention. You can tell the judge whatever you want. I'll tell him about the recordings, about the evidence, about the pattern of elder abuse. I walked to the front door and opened it. And I'll tell him that my son tried to murder his father for money he hadn't even inherited yet. Michael stopped in front of me. For a moment, I thought he might try something. Grab me, threaten me, do something desperate. But Mary pulled him toward the door. "This isn't over," he said. "Yes, it is. You just haven't realized it yet." They left, and I closed the door behind them, my hands shaking so badly I could barely turn the lock. Thomas was inside within seconds, coming through the back door. "I got everything," he said. Every word. "Elaine, that was incredible." I collapsed onto the stairs, adrenaline leaving my body in a rush. Did we get enough? For the police? For the police? For Hartley? For a judge? He played back sections of the recording. Michael admitting to the debt, Mary confirming the medication adjustment, their confession of planning to control my assets. What about Richard's death? Thomas's expression sobered. It's still circumstantial. Michael didn't confess to murder. But combined with the letter, with the pattern of behavior, it's enough to request a full investigation. Maybe even enough to exhume the body for additional toxicology testing. I thought of Richard, at rest in the cemetery. I thought of disturbing his peace, of making his death a spectacle, but I thought more of justice, of the truth. "Do it," I said. "Whatever it takes." Thomas made calls while I sat in Richard's study, surrounded by memories of the man who'd tried to warn me, tried to protect me, even from the grave. My phone buzzed. "Sophie, Grandma, Mom, and Dad just came home. They're really upset. Did something happen at dinner?" I texted back. "Nothing for you to worry about, sweetheart. Just grown-up disagreements. I love you. I love you too. Whatever's going on, I'm on your side." Tears blurred my vision. At least I hadn't lost her. At least some part of my family was still worth saving. Detective Albright arrived at 8:30 with 2 other officers. She listened to the recordings, read Richard's letter again, examined all the evidence Thomas had compiled. "This changes things," she said finally. "We have confession of financial manipulation, conspiracy to commit fraud, and possible involvement in a suspicious death. I'm opening a full investigation." "And the conservatorship petition?" I asked. "File a motion to dismiss based on this evidence. I'll provide a statement to the court about the criminal investigation. No judge is going to grant guardianship to someone under investigation for elder abuse." After they left, Thomas and I sat in the living room where I'd served dinner to my son and his wife, where we'd sat together dozens of times as a family. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now the legal system takes over. There'll be hearings, probably a trial. It won't be easy. Will I have to testify against Michael? Probably." I thought about that. Thought about sitting in a courtroom, telling a jury what my son had done, what he'd tried to do. "I can do it," I said. "Whatever it takes." Thomas stood to leave. "You did good tonight, Elaine. You were braver than most people would have been." I didn't feel brave. I felt terrified. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite it. He handed me his card. "Call me if you need anything, day or night." After he left, I walked through the quiet house, turning off lights, checking locks. In the kitchen, the dinner I'd prepared sat congealing on plates. I scraped it into the trash and washed the dishes, finding comfort in the mundane ritual. My phone rang one last time. An unknown number. I answered cautiously. "Hello? Mrs. Woolsey? This is Douglas Hartley. Detective Albright just called me. I wanted you to know. They're not filing the conservatorship petition. It's over." I sat down hard. "It's really over? The criminal charges aren't over. The investigation isn't over. But the threat to your freedom, your autonomy, that's done. You won." After we hung up, I sat in the dark kitchen and let myself cry. For Richard. For Michael. The boy he'd been. The man he'd become. For the family I'd lost and the innocence I'd never get back. But also for myself. For the strength I'd found. For the fight I'd won. I was 66 years old. My son had tried to destroy me. And I'd survived. 3 months later, I stood in the kitchen making coffee as winter sunlight streamed through the windows. The house felt different now, lighter somehow, despite everything that had happened. Or perhaps because of it. The coffee maker gurgled, and I pulled Richard's favorite mug from the cabinet. I'd started using it again, stopped treating his things like museum pieces. He wouldn't have wanted that. My phone buzzed. A text from Thomas. Sentencing hearing today at 2 p.m. Do you want me to pick you up? I texted back. I'll meet you there. Thank you. The criminal investigation had moved faster than anyone expected. Once Detective Albright started pulling threads, the whole scheme unraveled. Mary's employer had filed charges for embezzlement. The bank had evidence of mortgage fraud. And the district attorney, after reviewing Richard's letter and the medical evidence, had brought charges of criminally negligent homicide, not murder. They couldn't prove premeditated intent to kill, but they could prove that Michael and Mary had knowingly given Richard substances that posed a serious health risk, and that those substances had contributed to his death. Michael had taken a plea deal. 15 years, eligible for parole in 10. Mary had gotten 12. I still wasn't sure how I felt about that. Some days I thought it wasn't enough. Other days I thought about Sophie, now 13, living with Mary's parents, and wondered if any sentence could be enough when a child lost both parents to prison. The doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, but I'd stopped being afraid of unexpected visitors. Detective Albright had been right. Once the criminal investigation became public, once Michael and Mary were arrested, I'd been safe. They couldn't touch me anymore. I opened the door to find Attorney Douglas Hartley on my porch, briefcase in hand. Elaine, I hope I'm not intruding. I have some papers for you to sign. Of course, come in. I led him to the living room, the same room where I'd had that terrible dinner 3 months ago. I'd had the dining room table refinished since then. Somehow it had helped. Hartley pulled documents from his briefcase. The civil suit against Michael and Mary's estate has been settled. The court has awarded you full restitution for all documented damages, including medical costs, legal fees, and compensation for emotional distress. How much? $150,000. It's not everything they took, or tried to take, but it's what the court could verify and trace. I signed the papers with steady hands. What happens to the rest of their assets? Most of it's going to creditors. The house will be sold, the proceeds used to pay down their debts. There won't be much left. He paused. I've set up a trust for Sophie's education, as you requested. The court agreed that she shouldn't suffer for her parents' crimes. Thank you. Elaine, I have to say, in 30 years of practicing elder law, I've never seen someone fight back the way you did. Most people in your situation would have been steamrolled. I had help. You, Thomas, Detective Albright. We provided tools. You wielded them. He stood to leave, then turned back. What will you do now? Stay in the house? I looked around the living room. The photos of Michael as a child, the bookshelves Richard had built, the piano I hadn't played in months. Yes, this is my home. I'm not letting them take that from me, too. After Hartley left, I went to Richard's study. I'd made it my own space now, moved in my favorite reading chair, added better lighting, filled the shelves with the books I'd always meant to read but never had time for. On the desk sat a framed photo of Sophie from her last birthday. We'd started having weekly video calls, just the two of us, talking about books and school and everything except her parents. Her grandparents on Mary's side were good people, heartbroken by what their daughter had done. They'd welcomed my continued relationship with Sophie, understood that she needed family who wasn't tainted by scandal. I opened my laptop and checked my email. Sister Margaret from the soup kitchen had written asking if I'd be back to volunteer this week. I'd taken a month off after everything happened, but I'd returned in January. The work felt more important now, more real. Thomas still came to the soup kitchen sometimes, though he'd admitted he'd never actually been homeless. That had been part of his cover, a way to observe me and build trust. We'd become friends, real friends, the kind built on mutual respect rather than investigation and survival. There was an email from my book club. I'd joined in December, seeking connection with people who knew nothing about my situation. Women my age who talked about literature and gardening and grandchildren without pity or judgment. They knew I was a widow. They didn't need to know the rest. And an email from the high school where I'd taught. The new English teacher wanted advice on teaching Great Expectations. I smiled. Pip's story of manipulation and false expectations seemed almost too on the nose. At 1:30, I drove to the courthouse. The building was familiar now. I'd been here for hearings, depositions, the trial. The marble floors and security checkpoints no longer intimidated me. Thomas met me in the lobby. "You ready for this?" "As ready as I'll be." We rode the elevator to the 4th floor in silence. The hearing was in Judge Martinez's courtroom, the same judge who'd heard the criminal case, who'd listened to the recordings of that awful dinner, who'd read Richard's letter aloud in court while I sat in the witness stand and tried not to cry. The courtroom was nearly empty. This wasn't a trial, just a sentencing hearing. A few reporters sat in the back row. The case had made headlines for weeks. Local son attempts to murder father, defraud mother, splashed across newspapers and websites. Michael and Mary were brought in separately, both in prison uniforms, both thinner than I remembered. Michael's eyes found mine across the courtroom. I didn't look away. Judge Martinez entered, and we all stood. The formalities began. Lawyers speaking, victim impact statements read. I'd submitted mine in writing, unable to trust my voice to say the words aloud. He was my son. I would have given him anything. All he had to do was wait. But Michael hadn't wanted to wait. He'd wanted everything now, and he'd been willing to kill for it. The judge spoke, her voice measured and firm. "Michael Woolsey, Mary Woolsey, you stand convicted of conspiracy to commit fraud, elder financial abuse, medication tampering, and criminally negligent homicide. Your crimes were not crimes of passion or desperation, but of calculated manipulation spanning many months." Michael's lawyer started to speak, but the judge held up her hand. "I've read the letters from your friends and family asking for leniency. I've considered your lack of prior criminal history, but I've also considered the vulnerability of your victim, a grieving widow, your own mother, someone who trusted you completely." She looked at Michael. "You betrayed that trust in the most profound way possible." The sentences were handed down. 15 years for Michael, 12 for Mary, with strict conditions for parole, mandatory restitution, permanent restraining orders preventing contact with me. "Do you have anything to say?" Judge Martinez asked. Michael stood slowly. He looked at me, and for a moment I saw the boy he'd been, the child who'd climbed into my lap to read stories, who'd cried when his goldfish died, who'd hugged me so tight on his first day of college I could barely breathe. "Mom, His voice cracked. "I'm sorry. I know that's not enough. I know it doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know I'm sorry." Sorry he'd gotten caught, I wondered? Or sorry he'd done it? I stood up. The judge didn't stop me. "Michael, I loved you more than anything in this world. I would have done anything for you. Sacrificed anything." My voice was steady, stronger than I felt. "But you didn't want my love. You wanted my money. And you were willing to kill your father and destroy your mother to get it. I didn't mean for Dad to die, but he did. And you did nothing to save him. You watched him die, knowing what you'd done, and you let it happen." I paused. "You have 15 years to think about that. 15 years to understand what you threw away. And when you get out, if you get out, I hope you've learned that some things, trust, family, love, can't be bought or stolen or manipulated. They can only be earned." I sat down. Michael's shoulders shook. Mary stared at the floor. The judge gavelled the hearing closed. Outside the courthouse, reporters called questions. I ignored them, letting Thomas guide me to his car. We sat in the parking garage for a long moment. "You okay?" he asked. "I don't know. Ask me tomorrow." I looked at him. "Thank you for everything, for believing me when no one else did. You made it easy. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met." "I don't feel strong. I feel tired. Strength and exhaustion aren't mutually exclusive." He started the car. "Can I buy you dinner? Nothing fancy, just food and friendly conversation." "That sounds perfect." We went to a small Italian restaurant downtown, the kind of place where Richard and I used to go for anniversaries. I'd avoided it since his death, but sitting there now, I felt his presence in a good way, a comforting way. Thomas and I talked about everything except the trial, his daughter's upcoming wedding, my book club's latest selection, the soup kitchen's plans to expand its services, normal things, human things. "What will you do now?" he asked as we finished our coffee. "Now that it's all over?" "Live," I said simply. Really live, not just survive. I'm 66 years old, Thomas. I could have 20 good years left. Maybe 30 if I'm lucky. I'm not going to waste them grieving for people who don't deserve it. What about Sophie? Sophie deserves better than parents who are in prison. I'm going to be there for her. Video calls now, visits when she's ready. She's not her parents. She shouldn't have to pay for their sins. Thomas nodded. You're a good grandmother. I'm trying to be a good person. That's all any of us can do. We said goodbye in the parking lot. He hugged me, a brief, friendly embrace, and I realized how long it had been since someone had touched me with simple kindness. No manipulation, no agenda, just human warmth. I drove home through streets I'd known for 40 years, past the park, past the library, past the soup kitchen. My town, my life, still mine. At home, I made tea and sat in Richard's chair, my chair now, and opened my laptop. I'd been thinking about something for weeks, and tonight felt like the right time to start. I opened a new document and began typing. Chapter 1. The Warning. I was 66 years old when I learned that my son wanted me dead. Or if not dead, then locked away in a facility where I couldn't interfere with his plans to steal my life. The warning came from an unlikely source. A homeless man at the soup kitchen where I volunteered. If I was going to survive this, if I was going to help others survive similar situations, I needed to tell the story. Not for revenge, not for sympathy, but because elder abuse was real and hidden and devastating. Because families destroyed each other over money every day. Because someone needed to say the quiet part loud. I wrote for 2 hours, the words flowing faster than I expected. When I finally stopped, I had 3,000 words. A beginning. My phone buzzed. A text from Sophie. Hi, Grandma. I finished, To Kill a Mockingbird like you suggested. Can we talk about it on our call Sunday? I texted back, Absolutely. I can't wait to hear what you thought. I loved Scout. She reminded me of you. Brave and smart and doesn't let people push her around. I stared at that message for a long time. She reminded me of you. Maybe I had been brave. Maybe I was smart. Maybe I'd shown Sophie, and myself, that being older didn't mean being powerless. That 66 years of life experience was an advantage, not a weakness. That wisdom and patience could be more powerful than youth and aggression. I went upstairs to the bedroom I'd shared with Richard for 38 years. His reading glasses were gone now. I'd donated them along with his clothes, his shoes, his everyday things. But I'd kept the important stuff. His journals, his letters, the photo albums chronicling our life together. I pulled out the album from Michael's childhood and flipped through the pages. Birthday parties, first day of school, little league games, beach vacations. A normal life, a happy life. What had gone wrong? When had ambition turned to greed? When had love turned to calculation? I didn't know. Maybe I'd never know. Maybe Michael himself didn't know. But I knew this. I'd done my best. I'd raised him with love and values and opportunities. I'd given him everything I could. And what he'd done with those gifts, what he'd chosen to become, that was on him, not me. I put the album away and pulled out a different one. Photos of me with Richard, of our travels, of the life we'd built. And tucked in the back, recent photos. Me with my book club. Me at the soup kitchen. Me with Thomas and Sister Margaret at the Christmas dinner we'd served. A life. Not the life I'd planned, not the life I'd imagined when I was younger, but a life nonetheless, full and real and mine. I changed into pajamas and climbed into bed, the house quiet around me. No Richard breathing beside me. No sense that I needed to check on Michael, to make sure he was safe. Just me, Elaine Woolsey, 66 years old, widow, retired teacher, survivor. In the morning, I would go to the farmer's market. I would pick up fresh vegetables and bread. I would come home and work on my book. I would call Sophie. I would live my life. The house creaked and settled. I turned off the light and lay in the dark, thinking about the warning that had started everything. Thomas, pretending to be homeless, watching and documenting, waiting for the right moment to approach me. If he hadn't warned me, if I'd gone to Christmas at Michael's house as planned, what would have happened? Would they have staged some incident? Made me seem confused or incompetent in front of witnesses? Accelerated their timeline? I'd never know. And it didn't matter. What mattered was that I'd been warned. I'd investigated. I'd fought back. And I'd won. Not through violence, not through wealth, but through intelligence and patience, and the quiet strength that comes from 66 years of navigating a complicated world. Tomorrow, I would wake up in my own house. I would make coffee in my own kitchen. I would walk through rooms filled with memories that were mine to keep or release as I chose. The house wasn't just a building anymore. It was a symbol, proof that they hadn't won, proof that I was still here, still standing, still free. I thought about Richard's letter, his final words to me. Fight, Elaine, fight for yourself. I had fought, and I had won. Outside, a car drove past. The sound faded into the night. Inside, the house was warm and safe and mine. I closed my eyes and slept deeply for the first time in months, dreaming not of betrayal or courtrooms or lost sons, but of spring gardens and new chapters and all the life still waiting to be lived. At 66, I had learned the hardest lessons. I had survived the worst betrayal, and I had discovered that the end of one story could be the beginning of another. My story, on my terms, in my time, and no one, not my son, not my daughter-in-law, not anyone, could ever take that away from me again. Now tell me, what would you have done if you were in my place? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to check out the video on your screen right now. I'm sure it will surprise you.